In our last video, we talked about the different launch methods and ranked them based off of popularity. In this video, we're going to look at 20 major theme parks around the world that currently don't have a launch coaster. Some of these parks might surprise you, so let's get started with number 1, Adventureland, Altoona, Iowa. This park opened in 1974, and it currently has 7 operating coasters. This park has been investing coasters at a pretty good rate in the last decade or so. Monster in 2016, Phoenix in 2019, Dragon Slayer in 2021, and Flying Viking in 2023. With the rate of investment, I wouldn't be surprised to see this park get a launch coaster in the near future. Number 2, Bellewaerde Park, Belgium. This park is operated by Compagnie des Alpes and has been getting more investment in terms of roller coasters in recent years. The park actually opened back in 1954 with a focus on animals, and while there is still that animal focus to be sure, rides have become more and more prominent at Bellewaerde. 4 of the park's currently operating 5 roller coasters have been added in the last 11 years. Bellewaerde is a family park, and for that audience, certain launch coaster types would not appeal to them. Obviously, an extreme Intamin coaster or even an extreme Vekoma wouldn't appeal to them, but something family-friendly by Vekoma could be a really good fit here. Number 3, California's Great America, Santa Clara, California. Now, let's just pretend for a moment that this park won't be closing in the next decade or so, because I understand that the land that California's Great America sits on has been sold to real estate developer Prologis, and the chances of them adding coasters before they close the park is extremely slim. Even still, it's a bit surprising that when Grease Lightning closed in 2002, that marked the last time that you could go on a launch at CGA. Great America is a sad case of wasted potential. In fact, the park was originally supposed to get a launch coaster when Cedar Fair announced their 10-year plan a couple of years ago. It was rumored to be an Intamin impulse coaster. Safe to say, those plans aren't still in effect in 2024. Number 4, Disneyland and Disney's Animal Kingdom. Now, I'm including these together because they're in a similar situation, and that mostly is that they don't get new coaster investments very often. Animal Kingdom's only operating coaster is Expedition Everest, which originally opened back in 2006. This is a great ride, but this park could definitely use a launch coaster, in my opinion, to complement Expedition Everest. Disneyland's last non-kiddie coaster edition was way back in 1979 with Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, so if they can find the space for it, I think it's about time. And Disney is not afraid to add launch coasters. They've added multiple launch coasters recently to their parks in Florida, and California Adventure, of course, has Incredicoaster. So come on, Disney, make it happen. Number 5, Emerald Park, Ireland. This park did only open 14 years ago in 2010, so that's part of the reason why they don't have nearly as many coasters. They have 6 currently. The rate of investment, though, is very encouraging. They've gotten 5 coasters in the last 5 years, including 2 new coasters in 2024. To me, it only feels like a matter of time before this park branches out and gets a launch coaster. They already have a relationship with Vekoma, and if they're happy with Quest and Nafina Force, and I don't see why they wouldn't be, there's very good reviews for both those rides, then they might go back to the well for their launch coaster in the future. Number 6, Gardaland, Italy. This is one of Italy's more notable parks. It's owned by Merlin Entertainment and originally opened back in 1975. However, they have not had nearly as consistent as investment as some of the other parks we've talked about on this list. Oblivion the Black Hole was the park's last major thrill coaster, which opened in 2015. I would love to see Gardaland get a new coaster of any kind, in particular of the launch variety. Number 7, Gröna in Sweden. This landlocked boardwalk park originally opened way back in 1883. The park's first coaster wasn't added until 1931. Since then, they've continued to invest, with 14 coasters in their history and 7 currently operating in 2024. The most recent addition was the B&M Invert Monster. This opened in 2021. Like Emerald Park, this doesn't feel of a question of if, it's when. Number 8, Kentucky Kingdom, Louisville, Kentucky. Now we go back to the United States for a park that has an absolutely fascinating history. We're not going to get into all that right now, but they're currently owned by Herschend and have been for the last few years. Herschend has not added any new coasters yet, but they could in the future, hopefully. And we have a history with Herschend of launch coasters, so it's possible. This is a solid park as is, and despite the fact that they have more defunct coasters than operating ones, their 5 operating coasters make for a nice little lineup. The last edition was under Ed Hart in 2019 with Kentucky Flyer. Number 9, Knoebels, Eelsburg, Pennsylvania. Now, this is a classic park. They're coming up on 100 years in just 2 years. They opened in 1926. But it almost feels weird for this park to add a launch coaster because of the classic charm that it has. So, I understand that. That said, this park's 6 coaster lineup is lacking in that department. Their last edition was back in 2015 with the Zier multi-looper called Impulse. So what say you, would a coaster of this type mess up the vibe that Knoebels has? Number 10, Kolmården, Sweden. This admittedly isn't really that much of a major park, in particular because of the fact that at its core, it's a zoo. And while the two kids coasters that they do have peppered throughout their park are nice, they're ultimately only on this list because of Wildfire. If you go out and add a massive terrain Rocky Mountain Construction roller coaster, then really you can't be counted out of anything as far as I see it. Now, do I think them getting a launch coaster is likely? Honestly, not really, but it would be really cool to complement an awesome ride like Wildfire. Number 11, Legendia, Poland. This is not the biggest of theme parks. In fact, they only have 2 operating roller coasters, but one of them is a really darn good one, with Let Coaster, the Vekoma Multilooper. Now, even more important than a launch coaster is probably a family coaster for this park. Devil's Loop is the park's other coaster, and that has 2 inversions. So I think a family launch coaster, maybe from Mach or maybe from Vekoma, would be a really nice fit for Legendia if they were ever looking into another roller coaster. Number 12, Michigan's Adventure, Muskegon, Michigan. This park was on the Legacy Cedar Fair side before the Six Flags Cedar Fair merger, and it feels like it has a lot of potential that just really hasn't been used. Major roller coasters of any kind, in particular original ones, are just as rare as Dallas Cowboys playoff wins, and that's not a good thing. This park's last original thrill coaster was Shivering Timbers, which opened in 1998. Yikes. I really hope they look at this park in a different light after the merger. They deserve better, and the people of Michigan deserve better as well. Number 13, Maury's Piers, Wildwood, New Jersey. This boardwalk park has been able to add a lot of awesome coasters since they opened in 1969. They currently sport 7, with a lot of defunct coasters in their history, 11 to be exact. Even though they have 3 piers, space is still at a premium, and so they don't get new coasters nearly as often as some other parks. Runaway Train was added in 2019. But the park's last thrill coaster was back in 1996 with Great White. This park has some good rides. It's too bad that it's so expensive to ride each individual attraction. Maybe one day we'll see Maury's Piers invest and fill the biggest gap in their lineup, a launch coaster. Number 14, Mount Olympus, Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. I know it's crazy to even suggest a non-wooden coaster for a major attraction here at Mount Olympus, but I'm gonna do it. Now, I don't really think that this is an addition we'll see at Mount Olympus in the near future. I just think it would be a really good idea. This is a park that has 5 roller coasters, and all 4 of the somewhat major ones are made out of wood. Hey, I guess you gotta be famous for something, right? Number 15, Nigoland, France. This is a park that not too many folks talk about when you talk about European theme parks, but it looks really good. This park originally opened back in 1987, and currently they have 6 operating roller coasters. Alpina Blitz is the most notable of the bunch, the Mach Ride's mega coaster. Evidently, Nigoland agrees with me. Their new for 2027 roller coaster is going to feature a couple of launches and a couple of inversions, so good on you, Nigoland. Number 16, Silverwood Theme Park, Fall, Idaho. This is a park that I hope to visit next year, and they have some very notable attractions, including Stunt Pilot, the RMC Raptor. This family-owned park has been operating since the late 80s, 1988 to be specific, and Stunt Pilot is one of 7 operating roller coasters. Investments to Silverwood in the coaster department aren't unheard of, but they're not crazy common. Stunt Pilot was added back in 2021, the last coaster before that was in 2014, and that was a kids coaster. I hope that this park thinks about getting a launch coaster in the future. Number 17, Six Flags Mexico, Mexico City, Mexico. How many times can we say Mexico? I feel like this park sometimes gets forgotten about in the Six Flags chain because of the fact that it's not in the United States, but we shouldn't forget about Six Flags Mexico. It's a really solid park that opened back in 1982, and currently they have a tremendous top 2 with Medusa and Superman, the RMC and the Morgan Hypercoaster. To be honest, those 2 rides alone make Six Flags Mexico worth a visit, but if they added a launch coaster, it would only make it even better. Number 18, Tivoli Gardens, Denmark. While this park does have roller coasters, including one that goes all the way back to 1914, it ultimately isn't about the thrill rides, it's more about the atmosphere. This looks like one of the coolest parks in the world for atmosphere, and also one of the most beautiful. They did get a couple of kids coasters in 2019, but their last operating thrill coaster was Daemonen, which opened back in 2004. So it's been 20 years. If they have the space for it, which I know is tight at Tivoli Gardens, then I think a launch coaster would be a great idea. Number 19, Parque de Atracciones de Madrid in Madrid, Spain. This is another park that kind of flies under the radar in Europe, I think, but there's some really solid stuff here. They got a big boost of investment from 1999 to 2012. This was when all 7 of their operating roller coasters were added. But after TNT Tren de la Mina opened in 2012, that was the last coaster we saw this park add. So it's about time for this park to get something new, at least the way I see it. Number 20, and this is the last one, Worlds of Fun, Kansas City, Missouri. This park receiving a new coaster in 2023 with Zambezi Zinner was a really good step in the right direction, I think, for Worlds of Fun. Hopefully they build on it. This is a park that opened in 1973. Worlds of Fun feels very similar to Michigan's Adventure. It's a legacy Cedar Fair park that gets hardly any new coasters, and I would love to see that pattern change. So there you have it, 20 major theme parks in the world that don't currently have a launch coaster and that I think could use one. Let me know down in the comment section below if there are any I missed. As always, I really appreciate you for stopping by. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.